Welcome to NewsTrack YouTube channel. In today's video, we share the latest updates on celebrities who sadly passed away today. We remember their lives, achievements, and the impact they had on fans around the world. Our thoughts go out to their families and loved ones during this difficult time. Stay updated with real-time news on celebrity deaths and tributes from the entertainment industry. Wiz Jones. Wiz Jones dies at 86. I hope his wonderful music will live on and continue to make the world a richer place, wrote the artist's son, Simeon. British folk singer-songwriter Wiz Jones has passed away. The musician died on Sunday morning at Trinity Hospice, 2 days after his 86th birthday, as announced by his family in a social media statement. His loss has left a huge hole in the lives of our family and has robbed the music world of one of its precious treasures, wrote the artist's son, Simeon. Always a humble man. These were his closing words at the end of his last ever gig earlier this year, February 28, 2025. Thanks to all the people, all over the world in fact, that heard my songs and my guitar playing and came to my gigs for all those years. Thank you very much. Simeon also shared a link to one of Wiz's songs, See How the Time Is Flying, which was performed by the musician during his last gig. Wiz was worried about disappointing the audience with his now weak singing voice, but even more worried about letting them down by not showing up, wrote Simeon. I hope his wonderful music will live on and continue to make the world a richer place, he added. Born and raised in Surrey, England, Raymond Ronald Jones, Wiz Jones' real name, began his musical career at the age of 18, having taught himself guitar after being influenced by the skiffle movement. Throughout the mid-50s and the 60s, Jones played with a variety of musicians before releasing his solo, self-titled debut album in 1969. An early influence to the likes of Eric Clapton and John Renbourn, Jones enjoyed considerable success in the 70s, touring Europe both as a soloist and as a part of folk rock group Lazy Farmer alongside his wife Sandy. The folk musician's career experienced a revival following the reissue of his albums in the 90s and his appearance in Jan Lehmann's 1992 documentary on Bert Jansch, Acoustic Routes. He continued touring throughout the 21st century, with his last show taking place earlier this year. Dick Barnett. Dick Barnett dies at 88. Tennessee State basketball trailblazing player Dick Barnett, who also played 14 years in the NBA, died on April 26th. He was 88. Barnett became the first black player named to the NAIA All-American team in 1957, playing at Tennessee A&I State University, which later was renamed Tennessee State. He made the All-America team again in 1958 and 1959, and became TSU's all-time leading scorer with 3,209 career points. Barnett led TSU to the NAIA National Championship in 1957, 1958, and 1959. The team, which was the first to win 3 consecutive national championships, was inducted into Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame in 2019. Known for their fast-breaking and extreme discipline, they dominated their opponents with high-scoring and smothering defense, according to a release at the time from the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. Led on the court by John Rabbit Barnhill and Dick Barnett, the team also broke social barriers as they traveled to national tournaments and challenged segregation. Barnett was the most valuable player in the 1958 and 1959 NAIA national tournaments. He was inducted as an individual to the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame in 2024. Barnett, a Gary, Indiana native, was the 4th player selected in the first round of the 1959 NBA draft by the Syracuse Nationals. He played 3 seasons with Syracuse, 2 with the Cleveland Pipers, American Basketball League, 3 with the Los Angeles Lakers, and 9 with the New York Knicks. He was an NBA All-Star in 1968 and helped lead the Knicks to the 1970 and 1973 NBA championships. Barnett scored 15,358 career points in the NBA, had 2,812 rebounds, and 2,729 assists. Barnett's number 12 uniform number was retired by the Knicks. His number 35 TSU uniform number was also retired by the school. Along with basketball, Barnett was passionate about education. He earned a master's degree from New York University, and a doctorate in education from Fordham. Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood refused to cast his son in American Sniper. I auditioned and didn't get a role. These days, Hollywood nepotism is a hot-button topic that doesn't seem like it's going to go away anytime soon. In truth, the movie business has always worshipped at the altar of nepotism, and some of the biggest stars in history were undoubtedly given a leg up by their family name. However, it's perfectly understandable why people with no connections in the business feel at a disadvantage when going up against the latest nepo babies for roles. Perhaps this is why Clint Eastwood never gave a handout to his son Scott, who claimed his old fan ruthlessly turned him down for one of his biggest hits. Scott Eastwood was raised in Carmel-by-the-Sea, California, where his father happened to be the mayor for the first 3 years of his life. However, he eventually moved to Hawaii with his mother, Jocelyn Reeves, when he was 10. She worked as a flight attendant in the 1980s when she had an affair with Clint, and Scott was the product of that union in 1986. Scott was primarily raised by his mother, although he says his iconic father was also a part of his life from a young age. As he grew up, Scott didn't initially intend to follow his father into the family business. Acting wasn't inevitable for me, he told The Independent in 2015. I've always wanted to do something that is active and engaging and helps people. I would have been a firefighter. However, he eventually developed a taste for performing, but didn't fully commit to it until 2010 because he found roles hard to come by. Philip Lowry. Philip Lowry dies at 88. Original Coronation Street star Philip Lowry has died aged 88. Lowry, who appeared aged 24 in the first episode of the soap in 1960 as the ITV soap's original bad boy Dennis Tanner, died on Friday. His publicist Mario Renzullo said, "My client and very dear friend, Philip Lowry, the beloved actor renowned for his role as Dennis Tanner on Coronation Street, passed away yesterday at 88, Renzullo's statement said on Saturday, the 26th of April. His death marks the end of an era for the world's longest-running soap, where he became a cornerstone of its storytelling. Dennis Tanner became something of a national heartthrob when he was introduced more than 6 decades ago. The son of Elsie Tanner, he moved in with his mother after being released from prison, leaving Coronation Street in 1968 after marrying Jenny Sutton and relocating to Bristol. Lowry did not return to the soap until 2011, which resulted in him achieving a Guinness World Record as the person with the longest gap between television appearances as the same character in the same show. Upon his return, Dennis got back in touch with his former sweetheart, news agent Rita Sullivan, Barbara Knox. The reunited couple, who met shortly after Rita first appeared in the show in 1966, were later married. Lowry departed Coronation Street again in 2014 and was killed off without making another appearance. The actor originally auditioned for the role of Ken Barlow, which went to William Loach. Dennis and Ken would end up as regular sparring partners. Born in Ashton-under-Lyne near Manchester, he attended the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, RADA, after his mother saved up for his school fees. His earliest roles were in the West End opposite Dame Margaret Rutherford and Peggy Mount in the play Farewell, Farewell, Eugene. He also appeared with Victoria Wood in several of her comedy shows, including Pat and Margaret, Live in Your Own Room, Victoria Wood as Seen on TV, and Victoria Wood's All Day Breakfast. Lowry later returned to the stage in the noughties and 2010s for roles in Agatha Christie's The Mousetrap and The Lady Vanishes. Tributes have been paid to him on social media, including from the Conversation Street podcast, which said, Jiggly Caliente. Jiggly Caliente dies at 44. The drag queen Jiggly Caliente has died aged 44 after a severe infection, her family confirmed. The performer, whose real name was Bianca Castro Arabejo, rose to fame after taking part in the 4th season of RuPaul's Drag Race. Caliente's family announced on Thursday that the Filipino-American drag performer had part of her leg amputated due to the infection. Her family wrote on Instagram that she was cherished by many for her career and died on Sunday at 4:42 a.m., surrounded by her loving family and close friends. On Instagram, the BBC Radio 2 DJ and RuPaul's Drag Race judge Michelle Visage wrote, "My Jiggles, the laughter was endless, our talks were special, your energy was contagious. You were and remain so very loved. This world has lost an angel, and we want you to soar high. I love you so much, honey." A statement from Caliente's family said the star was a luminous presence in the worlds of entertainment and advocacy, adding that she would be deeply missed and eternally remembered. Her family said she touched countless lives through her artistry, activism, and the genuine connection she fostered with fans around the world. Though her physical presence is gone, the joy she shared and the space she helped create for so many will remain forever. After publicly coming out as transgender, Caliente was a contestant on RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars Season 6 and was set to judge the latest season of the spin-off program Drag Race Philippines, after being appointed as a judge when the show began airing in 2022. A statement shared by the show and producers World of Wonder on social media said they were devastated and asked for Caliente's family to be given the privacy and space to grieve their tremendous loss. They added, "Jiggly's humor, love, and light touched so many in the Drag Race family and beyond. Her legacy will continue to uplift the communities she advocated for." Born on the 29th of November 1980, Caliente moved from the Philippines to New York when she was a child. She was praised in her first Drag Race series by the judges for her sense of humor and impressive lip syncs when she battled not to leave the competition early, while also struggling with sewing garments during some challenges. She was eliminated before the final, with Sharon Needles going on to be crowned champion in 2012. Since the franchise began in 2009, the reality show has been hit by the deaths of RuPaul's Drag Race UK stars Cherry Valentine, 28, and the Vivienne, 32, as well as US competitors Sahara Davenport, 27, and Chi Chi DeVane, 34. Arnold Schwarzenegger. He once seemed invincible, a man carved out of stone, as if he had stepped out of mythology rather than a small village in Austria. Arnold Schwarzenegger, the name itself, carried a weight that transcended borders. To millions, he was more than just a champion bodybuilder, a Hollywood superstar, or a political figure. He was a symbol of perseverance, of discipline, of dreams achieved through unrelenting hard work. Now, that same man, who once stood at the peak of physical perfection, is fighting a far different, far quieter battle. His health has deteriorated in recent months, and the risks he faces grow more serious by the day. Time, the one opponent none of us can outlift or outrun, has come for the man who defied so many odds. Arnold's journey has always been remarkable. From training with makeshift weights in a post-war Austrian town, to becoming the youngest Mr. Universe, to changing the landscape of action cinema, and later, steering the world's fifth largest economy as governor of California, his life has unfolded like an epic. But even the strongest heroes, the most enduring legends, must one day face their final chapters. Those close to him say his energy has waned. His appearances are less frequent, and when he does show up, he walks slower, speaks softer, and tires more easily. There's a tremor in his hands now that never used to be there. His workouts, once legendary in their intensity, have become gentle morning walks. His larger-than-life persona is giving way to something more human, more fragile. Arnold has long struggled with heart issues. A congenital defect required his first heart surgery back in 1997, and though the surgery was successful, it was only the beginning. J.C. Sneed. J.C. Sneed dies at 84. J.C. Sneed stared down one of the greatest golfers of all time, Jack Nicklaus, and didn't flinch with the 1995 Senior Players Championship on the line. His birdie on the first playoff hole secured his lone major championship and cemented his status as one of the biggest names in Timesland golf history. That victory was the Hot Springs native's highlight during an illustrious professional career that spanned more than 4 decades. Sneed, 84, died Friday from complications with cancer in Hot Springs. He was a part of a legendary golf family that was led by his late uncle, World Golf Hall of Fame member Sam Snead. J.C. Snead carried on the legacy of the Snead name for the 42 years he was a regular either on the PGA Tour or PGA Tour Champions. PGA Tour Champions President Miller Brady said in a statement, "J.C. was a brilliant competitor, and like his uncle Sam, he came from a small town only to end up competing and succeeding on the biggest of stages. We mourn his death and send our love to his family." Snead's playoff win over Nicklaus was his penultimate professional victory. He won the 2002 Greater Baltimore Classic by 1 stroke over Bobby Watkins, John Mahaffey, and Doug Toole. He set a senior tour record for longest gap between victories spanning 6 years, 11 months, and 7 days. "I felt like if I kept plugging away, I could win," Snead said after his final triumph. Snead won 8 times on the PGA Tour and 4 more times on the PGA Tour Champions. He also won once on the PGA Tour of Australasia in 1973. Snead won more than $7 million in his professional career. He finished runner-up in the 1973 Masters, was tied for second in the 1978 US Open, and was tied for third in the 1973 PGA Championship. He also had a pair of second-place finishes in the Players' Championship and earned a spot on 3 Ryder Cup teams, 1971, 1973, 1975. Snead played in 1,097 tournaments during his time on the PGA Tour and PGA Tour Champions. Walt Jocketty. Walt Jocketty dies at 74. Walt Jocketty, a 3-time Baseball Executive of the Year and former general manager for both the St. Louis Cardinals and the Cincinnati Reds, has died. He was 74. Jocketty died Friday in the Phoenix area. Former Cardinals manager Tony La Russa told the team after speaking with Jocketty's wife, Sue. The Cardinals announced the death Saturday. Jocketty had been battling health issues for the several years. Before Saturday's 6-5 victory over the Milwaukee Brewers, the Cardinals held a moment of silence for Jocketty. The Cardinals won the National League Central Division 7 times under Jocketty's leadership. St. Louis also won National League championships in 2004 and 2006, and their 10th World Series title in 2006. The 2006 championship, with a team that won 83 games in the regular season, ended a 24-year drought. On behalf of the entire St. Louis Cardinals organization, I would like to offer condolences to Walt's family and his many friends, Cardinals chairman Bill DeWitt Jr. said in a statement. "Walt was our first GM when we purchased the ball club, and he helped to lead our baseball operations through some of the franchise's most successful and memorable years." Jocketty broke into baseball with the Oakland Athletics in 1980, winning a World Series ring in 1989. Jocketty became the general manager in St. Louis on October 14, 1994. After the team was sold in 1995, the new ownership kept Jocketty in his job. His biggest move was hiring La Russa in 1996. The two men had worked together in Oakland. La Russa would go on to be the winningest manager in the Cardinals' history and a Hall of Famer. Jocketty revamped the team's roster, and in 1996, the Cardinals returned to postseason play for the first time in 9 seasons. In his tenure with St. Louis, Jocketty either drafted or acquired such stars as Albert Pujols, Yadier Molina, Mark McGwire, Adam Wainwright, Chris Carpenter, David Eckstein, Jason Isringhausen, Jim Edmonds, Scott Rowland, and others. Alexis M. Herman. Alexis M. Herman dies at 77. The first black leader of the U.S. Department of Labor, former Secretary Alexis Herman, has died at the age of 77. Former President Bill Clinton nominated Herman to the role, which she held from 1997 to 2001, following a career in social work, civil rights, and democratic politics. "Hillary and I are deeply saddened by the loss of Alexis Herman, our friend of nearly 50 years, former President Clinton said in a statement. "Our hearts and prayers are with her family and all who loved and admired her." Current Secretary of Labor Lori Chavez DeRemer said in a statement that Herman, quote, "was a trailblazer who dedicated her life to strengthening America's workforce and creating better lives for hardworking families." Herman was born in Mobile, Alabama in 1947, at a time when Jim Crow laws imposed racial segregation and discrimination across the American South. "The struggle for civil rights was a daily part of our lives," Herman later testified to Congress. Herman graduated from Xavier University of Louisiana, a Catholic and historically black university in New Orleans. She later worked on school desegregation efforts in her hometown of Mobile. In 1977, when Herman was 29 years old, then-President Jimmy Carter selected her to lead the Women's Bureau at the Department of Labor. In a 1977 interview with NPR, Herman described the Bureau's mission to serve women in the workplace. "That means help women to get jobs," Herman said. "That means to help women find out about opportunities for jobs. That means informing women of their rights if they're being discriminated against. Herman went on to work on the 1988 presidential campaign of civil rights leader Jesse Jackson. And in 1992, she became the first black woman to hold the position of CEO of the Democratic National Convention before joining the Clinton administration. I believe that our lives are a gift from God. And what we do with our lives is a gift to God, Herman said after receiving an award from the National Political Congress of Black Women in 1996. Virginia Giuffre. Why Prince Andrew is finished after Virginia Giuffre's death. The death by suicide of Virginia Giuffre, 41, has brought a tragic end to the royal scandal that engulfed Prince Andrew, and with it, any remaining hopes of rehabilitating his reputation. Giuffre, a key accuser in the Jeffrey Epstein case, died by suicide at her Australian farm years after alleging that Andrew sexually abused her when she was 17. She had pursued the Duke of York with tenacity, forcing him to step back from public duties and eventually securing a multi-million-pound settlement in 2022 with no admission of liability from Andrew. Andrew has always denied wrongdoing, and the claims were never tested in criminal court, but his name was dragged through the mire. Now, the damage that sordid episode caused is set in concrete. Public sympathy will henceforth and forever lie with Giuffre, remembered by her family as a, quote, fierce warrior for abuse survivors this weekend. In contrast, Prince Andrew's pathetic attempts to defend himself have only ever deepened his disgrace. He continues to claim to friends that he has no recollection of meeting Giuffre, despite that photograph of him with his arm around her bare teenage waist, with a ghoulish Ghislaine Maxwell grinning nastily behind them. His now notorious 2019 BBC Newsnight interview, in which he bizarrely claimed to have been at a Pizza Express on the day he was alleged to be with Giuffre, and suggested Giuffre was lying about meeting him because she said he was sweaty, and he claimed to have lost the ability to sweat, backfired disastrously, prompting nationwide ridicule and scorn. The prince, often dubbed the quote, favorite son, was stripped of royal patronages and official duties following the interview. He paid a rumored $14 million in an out-of-court settlement, a deal reportedly urged on him by the late Queen to avoid a humiliating court trial. Peter Bossistow died at 67. The football community mourns the loss of a beloved player and vibrant personality. The AFL and WAFL community is mourning the death of former Carlton and Perth favorite Peter Bossistow, aged 67. A member of the WA Football Hall of Fame, Bossistow, passed away in Perth on Monday morning following a battle with rectal and liver cancer. Known affectionately as The Buzz, Bossistow was renowned for his incredible highlight reel throughout a 13-season career with the WAFL's Demons and the VFL's Blues, including 2 premierships with Carlton in 1981 and 1982. His 1981 campaign included the extraordinary feat of winning both the VFL's Mark of the Year and Goal of the Year in the same season, an achievement matched only by Richmond's Michael Mitchell in the league's history. Bossistow kicked 146 goals in 65 games at Carlton, winning 49 of those games in a dominant era for the Blues, before returning to WA in 1984 after his father, fellow former Blue Bob Bossistow, became ill. In total, Bossistow booted 379 majors in 141 WAFL appearances for Perth, including a role in the club's most recent premiership in 1977. He also represented WA 8 times for 17 goals before calling time on his career in 1987. His legacy was cemented when he was named on a half-forward flank in the Demons Team of the Century and earned his WA Football Hall of Fame induction in 2017. Perth president Adrian Barich described Bossistow as a legendary figure who left a lasting mark on the game. Barich stated, "Known affectionately as The Buzz, Peter thrilled fans with his electrifying style, spectacular high-flying marks, ferocious tackling, and unmistakable flair on the field." At both the Perth Football Club and Carlton, Peter Bossistow's career was marked by brilliance and passion. He was a premiership player for the Demons, and a dual premiership player with Carlton, and a celebrated personality in the football community. Paul A. Batiste. Paul A. Batiste dies at 75. Paul A. Batiste, a pillar of New Orleans' music scene and longtime educator, inspired generations through his leadership, teaching, and songwriting. Paul A. Batiste, a beloved New Orleans musician, educator, and bandleader who helped shape the city's rich musical legacy, died Friday. He was 75. Batiste, a native of New Orleans, was a principal songwriter and bandleader for the Batiste Brothers Band, composing nearly the entire catalog of music that defined the group's sound. In addition to his musical achievements, he was a passionate music educator who spent more than 30 years mentoring generations of students in the city's public schools. A 1978 graduate of Southern University at New Orleans, Batiste began his teaching career with student assignments at McDonough 35 and John McDonough High School. He later served as band director at Hines Elementary, McDonough 15, Lafayette Elementary, and Sophie B. Wright, influencing the careers of prominent New Orleans musicians including Danny Barker, Henry Butler, James Black, and James Booker. Batiste also co-wrote and produced the soundtrack for the Batiste Brothers Band's short film A Stranger's Story, and documented his life and career in Memoirs of Paul Batiste. He is survived by his siblings, children, grandchildren, and extended family. The city of New Orleans issued a statement. Mayor LaToya Cantrell and the city of New Orleans mourn the loss of Paul A. Batiste, a proud son of New Orleans, Army veteran, educator, musician, and cultural icon. Mr. Batiste dedicated his life to service, in the military, in the classroom, and on the stage, shaping generations of musicians and preserving the rich legacy of New Orleans music. We extend our deepest condolences to his family, friends, and all those whose lives he touched. His spirit will live on through the countless students he taught, the music he shared, and the community he loved so deeply. Stan Love. Stan Love dead at 76. Stan Love, a former NBA player, the brother of Beach Boys singer Mike Love, and the father of UCLA legend and NBA star Kevin Love, has died. He was 76. Kevin, who currently plays for the Miami Heat, took to Instagram to announce his father's death. Stan died on Sunday night, though the cause of death was not disclosed. It appears Stan had been battling health issues over the last 6 months. Dad, you fought for a long time. The hardest stretch being these past 6 months. The most painful to witness being these last few weeks. And even at the end, as you continued to deteriorate, I still saw you as a giant, Kevin shared in a lengthy caption. My protector. My first hero. The words we continuously heard from you in your last chapter were, how blessed you've been to have such a loving family. And in return, how much you've loved your wife and kids. Your only wish was to be at home, surrounded by your family, when you took your dying breath. That breath came, and now it's time to rest. Kevin went on to say that his father was undoubtedly his, quote, greatest teacher and a role model who taught him about respect, kindness, humor, wit, ambition, work ethic, grit, and aggressive will. Like all of us, my dad was imperfect. But despite his flaws, and my own, we are a successful story of father and son. A never-ending bond, rooted in love, that will forever remain eternal, Kevin continued. Dad, I'm so proud to be your son. My only hope is that you're proud of me. It was all I ever wanted. Thank you for everything. I love you, your son Kevin. Stan, who stood at a whopping 6'9", played basketball at the famed Morningside High School in Inglewood, CA, the same high school WNBA legend Lisa Leslie attended. Stan went on to play at Oregon before he was selected with the number 9 overall pick in the 1971 NBA draft. Stan played in 226 games across 4 seasons with the then Washington Bullets and the Los Angeles Lakers. He also played in the American Basketball Association for 12 games with the San Antonio Spurs. Robert Redford. The actor Robert Redford called the best in the business as good as it gets. With a career that lasted 6 decades and saw him work with the greatest actors of multiple generations, Robert Redford is in a pretty decent position to comment on which performer deserved to be called the absolute best of the best. Is it controversial to say that he probably isn't one of them? It depends. Redford was far from a bad actor, but he wasn't on the same level as some of his peers who helped him define the new Hollywood era, like Jack Nicholson, Gene Hackman, or his longtime friend Paul Newman. From his 2 films with Jane Fonda in the 1960s, to directing a young Scarlett Johansson in The Horse Whisperer almost 30 years later, Redford has also been up close and personal with stars at the beginning of their careers, who'd go on to accomplish incredible things and become household names. He's also shared the screen with, been part of the same cast, or directed Dustin Hoffman, Brad Pitt, Donald Sutherland, Matt Damon, Will Smith, Tom Cruise, Mia Farrow, Faye Dunaway, Sean Connery, Michael Caine, Glenn Close, Julie Christie, and Robert Duvall, all of whom have won Academy Awards, or held their own in at least one masterpiece, and in many cases, both. And yet, if he were pressed to name one person who stands alone as the profession's pinnacle, he knows who'd get the nod. If anything, it might seem like the obvious choice, but if so many people are willing to go out on a limb and call Meryl Streep the greatest of all time, then it's not without merit.